Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, I'm Dan McDermott. Welcome. This is the McDermott Report. We stream live every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. My guest tonight is the elusive attorney David Silek in Virginia, who's having some telephone difficulties. So I'm going to go ahead and start. We are going to begin with the Allen West tirade. This is a great story from Politico, and this is funny. Allen West, a Republican congressman, is in South Florida, and his district neighbors that of Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, who's the new chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Well, both sides have been going, and I'm going to bring David in here. Let me try to get him on. David, welcome. Welcome, David.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right. My guest is the elusive David Silek, attorney at law in Virginia. And we'll get into some of his famous cases. I don't know. We'll see. He made me sign a 6-page disclaimer before we did the show. But anyway, all right, let's talk about Allen West. He is, as I said, for David's benefit, because he wasn't briefed on the story, this was a last-minute story. He and Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, who is the Democratic National Committee chairman, are in neighboring districts in South Florida. And Politico has a story here. Apparently, he said whatever he said about the debt limit. I assume he's sort of a Tea Party favorite. I assume he's against it and wants, cut, cap, and balance, which is their plan for cutting spending, capping it, and introducing a balanced budget amendment. Anyway, so she went up and she said the gentleman from Florida, who represents thousands of Medicare beneficiaries, as do I, is supportive of this plan that would increase costs for Medicare beneficiaries. Unbelievable from a member of South Florida. Wasserman-Schultz said, I'm reading from Politico, she said that the legislation slashes Medicaid and critical investments essential to winning the future in favor of protecting tax breaks for big oil, millionaires, companies who ship American jobs overseas. And this is basically what they've been saying all day. The Democrats, both sides have their party line, attacking the others. Well, this did not go well with her neighboring congressman, Allen West, who responded, looked at in an email, and he sent it to a bunch of Democrat leaders and Republican leaders. Look, Debbie, I understand that after I departed the House floor, you directed your floor speech comments directly toward me. Let me make myself perfectly clear. You want a personal fight, I am happy to oblige. You are the most vile, unprofessional, despicable member of the U.S. House of Representatives. If you have something to say to me, stop being a coward, say it to my face. Otherwise, shut the heck up. Focus on your own congressional district. I'm bringing your actions today to our majority leader and majority whip, and from this time forward, understand that I shall defend myself forthright against your heinous, characterless behavior, which dates back to the disgusting protest you ordered at my campaign headquarters, October 2010 in Deerfield Beach. You have proven repeatedly that you are not a lady, therefore shall not be afforded due respect from me. Steadfast and loyal, Congressman Allen B. West. What? And the first comment under here,
beautiful.
The very first comment, how do I send a contribution to Representative West? I said that to Larry Sabato. That's funny. Yeah, he lost his cool, I guess. What's funny, though, David, every time I've seen him, you've seen him on TV. He's always this calm, placid guy, very respectful in tone and demeanor. This is a bit of a surprise, isn't it?
Well, actually, I think he's probably gotten to Washington and is already fed up with some of it. And I don't rightly blame him. I think that's exactly the sense of righteous indignation that our framers had in mind. And the way they responded to one another, rather than this, let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya and pray we dodge this bullet that Congress typically does. I think his response is phenomenal.
I think a little no BS honesty is refreshing. And I think that first comment says it all. I think this kind of thing is, I'm sure it was done in haste and frustration that they're all going through. But this kind of thing, it could definitely go either way. But it appears to, certainly I don't see it hurting him in his base.
I'd say the people that elected him are completely approving of his comments to that woman.
That first comment says it all. How do I send a contribution? We'll whip out our visas and give them $10 a piece, if for no other reason than it's nice and refreshing to see someone who actually states his true feelings instead of partisan talking points. But anyway, that's funny. That's priceless. Okay, next thing, let's talk, while we're on this debt thing, which I jokingly refer to as a ratings bonanza because it makes most folks' eyes glaze, but it's a real deal. The Democrats today released a radio commercial. I think it's a radio ad. I don't know if it's radio or TV, but it's basically Ronald Reagan advocating for an increase in the debt limit, because this is nothing new. This is not some Obama thing. This goes back to George Washington. The nation has always had a debt. And there's nothing wrong with a reasonable amount of debt. For example, typically you want to borrow for long-term things. You want to have long-term debt for long-term things. For example, if you wanted to borrow money to build a highway or a toll road, and then you're going to recoup your expenses or get use of it over 50 years, there's nothing wrong with that. If Front Royal want the town you're in and the town that I have a newspaper in, if they wanted to build a bigger water plant or something like that, that's going to benefit folks and they're going to have a revenue stream. There's nothing wrong with borrowing money to bring people clean water if it makes fiscal sense and the people want it, etc. But in this case, we are at risk. Moody's is threatening to downgrade the United States AAA bond rating, which is the highest you can get, which would mean interest rates are higher for everyone. So the Republicans have been saying that they want to see if to approve this. Really, this is a backdoor thing saying Obama's spending too much, but he's only spent about as much as Bush did. But Bush had 2 wars and 9/11. Under Clinton, it was about $2 trillion in annual budget, and then Bush added $1 trillion, and then Obama's added $1 trillion. So this is not a nonpartisan issue, or this is a nonpartisan issue to a degree. But now the Republicans are saying, now it looks like this plan that's. You want to describe it, or what are your thoughts on this thus far?
Well, I think the plan that I read about that's being brewed or hatched out in McConnell and dingy Harry's office is perfectly abysmal. The bottom line, in my not-so-humble opinion, is debt must be cut. And I agree with the assertion that long-term projects can be financed over the long term. However, I think it is disingenuous for this generation of Americans, or actually we're talking about 2 generations of Americans right now, to leave a debt that 2 or 3 generations can't pay. And frankly, my parents' generation, or your parents' generation, the baby boomers, started this hideous spending craze at the federal level, and it's just continued. And the sense of entitlement of the some in this country is astounding, that they will borrow to pay for simple things rather than long-term things. And at the end of the day, after you've borrowed it, all you have is debt because that money's already gone. It wasn't invested. It was just spent. And the days of living on a credit card for this country have got to end. I think the Tea Party people, et cetera, are right that spending must be cut. That's how you get your debt limit lowered or back in whack. You quit spending. You don't spend money you simply do not have. Ronald Reagan, in his initial inauguration in 1981, said that an American family can live on credit but for so long. And that why should we as a country think we cannot do the same or do otherwise? And he said we are going to begin to cut, and we are going to cut today. So I can't wait to hear what the ad is. I haven't heard this ad that the Dems have put out. But if I were in the Republican committee room writing ads, I'd be pulling out the Ronald Reagan inauguration speech where he talks about debt and that why should we as a country think that we can do something that the American family cannot do, and that's live on debt for just our credit for a limited amount of time. We've reached that limit. And like so many Americans who have borrowed on credit cards and don't want to risk throwing everything away through a filing of bankruptcy, American families across the nation have had to cut their spending. It's time for the government to do the same. I have clients daily come in. They own various assets that they don't want to lose in a bankruptcy. So the only option is to restructure the debt to pay it off, and in order to reduce that, they have to reduce their spending or their consumption. The same thing applies to a country. Why should a country be able to do that which a family cannot do? And it's just irresponsible to saddle future generations of Americans with debt that's going to merely finance the here and the now rather than long-term infrastructure, et cetera, that you previously mentioned. And that's all this debt is doing, is going to finance the here and the now, the me generation, and what is in effect the me generation rather than long-term stuff. And you and I both know the government can't be trusted to say, oh, well, it'll only be used for long-term. We know that's not true.
Yeah, I think we were running a surplus under Clinton. And then what happened, we had this financial disaster in 2008, and then they threw all their resources at it, and it didn't work. And now it's still a disaster, and it's really like double dip levels. We're still in a recession. We're in a disposable income depression, and so what's left? And it's all about moderation. Like I said, since George Washington was president, we've had a national debt. Since before then, we've had a national debt. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think most countries have debt, but it's about how much debt. It's about how much you're spending. It's about whether you're on track to, get in a reasonable level, or whether you're on track to keep getting worse and worse, and we're in the latter position. Now, this new plan, first of all, let me just say, if you'd like to join the conversation, you're more than welcome to. Please call 818-688-6625. You can call that number and just listen if you're in your car and you don't have Ustream to watch, or you can press 1 while listening if you want to join in. If one of us says something that gets you going, chime in. And we especially love it when you disagree with us, because that makes it for more of a fun show. Anyway, so, yeah, this new plan that they're talking about, the McConnell plan, which has now been signed on to by your favorite senator, Senator Harry Reid, it's complicated. I have a link. If you go to my Google Plus page, I've got a link. It's really intricate. Basically, they would pass a thing saying that the president could request an increase in the debt limit 3 times for a total of about $2 trillion. It would get us out of the immediate problem, the August deadline, and that the way it would work is he can request it, and if in both houses, the Republicans can put up a resolution against it, and if it passes in both, then it's killed. But if it at least one chamber passes it or sustains his veto of the resolution, then the debt limit's increased. And at the same time, there has to be a thing. In other words, it's a way for the Republicans to say, this is all on you, President Obama. This is not our doing. If you want to do it, you're going to do it. You can do it 3 times. They split into 3 different times before the election. The last one's in September, I think, of next year. And so anyway, that's the current plan that looks like it's going to happen. The problem with the plan, again, if you go to my Google Plus thing, which is on here, gplus.to/McDermott, you can read the links to all the stories we're talking about tonight. The problem with this is Moody says this plan does not, it addresses the need to raise the debt limit, but it does not guarantee enough reduction in spending so that Moody's may still lower the AAA bond rating. I don't know the history of how long we've had a AAA bond rating, but our credit has historically been excellent. So it sounds to me, David, like even if this plan happens, it's not enough.
Well, the plan, as it's set forth, I think will fail in the House of Representatives. So I think it's probably DOA in the House. So ergo, there's no plan.
I think I don't
see them getting the House on board with it.
You really think that they would actually let what the Democrats are calling Armageddon and what Michelle Bachmann is saying is no big deal? You think that they would actually let that happen?
I think it's a real likelihood.
I think it's a big risk, because if all hell breaks loose and everyone in America has to pay higher interest rates overnight, I think that's a big risk.
Even with the plan, everyone in America is probably going to still have to pay higher interest rates.
Well,
Moody said so, and
with the
moderator. And if you go through the rest of the Moody thing, the people in Virginia are already screwed.
That's the next thing, yeah.
And guess what? I live in Virginia. So thank you, Mr. Obama, for raising my interest rates.
And unfortunately, there's no inflation, which would be inflation is the debtor's friend. The problem is, I see the House passing it or something, because if they pass it, it's all Obama's fault from the Republican perspective.
The House is not going to pass anything unless it actually calls for spending reductions. And the dingy, hairy, what's the idiot from Kentucky, McConnell, the McConnell dingy, hairy plan doesn't mandate spending cuts. It allows the president to propose them. And then they have to be approved by the legislature. But here's the problem. The Senate never has met a spending bill that it doesn't want to increase.
That's true. I think that there's a different climate now, and that, as Reverend Wright would have said, the chickens have come home to roost on all the spending. But I think that the safer option for them is to pass something like this, because this way they get to say it's all Obama's fault. The other thing is, if they don't do anything and it is a disaster, then they get blamed for it. I would predict that they'll cave and sign it, but I guess we'll have to disagree, and we'll see. It's going to be interesting watching this happen. And as you pointed out, that under this plan, if what Moody says is there could actually be several states that would end up with a higher credit rating than the United States. If it's lowered, like Texas is in good shape. Virginia, I thought, would have been on that list, but it isn't, because it's tied to it gets a lot of federal funding.
Too many federal jobs, right? Too many federal jobs in Virginia.
Yeah, Northern Virginia's been largely insulated from the recession because of D.C.
Right.
So that's interesting. But otherwise, I mean, I think Virginia was just rated by Forbes magazine as the best state for business. I believe the governor sent me a press release about that, if I'm not mistaken. He was touting that, so he was all excited. So anyway, all hell's going to break loose unless they do this thing, which will mean that it'll be purgatory. So I guess those are the two options.
I doubt the predictions of Armageddon will come to pass. I doubt all hell will break loose. It was sort of like, oh, God, the sky's going to fall if we don't rescue GM. Well, we rescued them, and they still went bankrupt. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the end of the United States. It will simply mean that the day that the debt ceiling's reached, the federal government will quit spending on certain areas. And those are ongoing liabilities. Long-term liabilities will all be paid first, but then all current liabilities or spending will have to cease that day. That's what it means. It's a mere accounting function, really. And it will mean employees get furloughed. Okay, well, we had that government shutdown before. It happened back in the Clinton administration. The government shut down. And guess what? The sky didn't fall. Kingdom Come didn't occur. Armageddon didn't occur. So if we hit the debt ceiling, so what? The government can't spend money. As I view it, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
It's not about spending money at all. It's about paying our debts. It's about, even Ronald Reagan said that's what the ad is.
Well, that might be what the ad is, but it's about spending money. The problem is, on August 2nd or 1st or whatever day it is, the government has liabilities of, I'm just pulling numbers out because I heard it discussed this morning, $32 billion or $320 billion that day, and they're only going to take in $130 billion that day. But let's say 32 and 13 to talk easier numbers. So there's a deficit, and they can't go to a credit card to finance it. That means they got to quit spending on something else to get that money to pay whatever it is they're going to pay out. They're still going to pay stuff out, but they're going to have to automatically cut that spending somewhere.
Can you imagine?
Spending will have.
Can you imagine? It's like, oh yeah, it's Wednesday. I gotta write a check for $320 billion today. Thursday it's $280 billion.
Sure. Right, I think it's perfectly absurd. But the problem is, we've as a society have said to Congress and to the lunatics in the White House, spend.
I wonder how many people.
How do we suck off the public mouth?
I wonder how many people are paid like 80 to 120 grand a year, plus benefits, retirement, to actually just pay all that. I bet there's a big office somewhere.
That's another issue. The federal government, if you ask someone, could not tell you how many people they employ. They have no idea anymore. They have no idea how many contract employees they have. They have no idea how many salaried or hourly employees they have. They've lost track.
I don't know. All right, well, let me go ahead.
The Office of Personnel Management has no clue anymore, and they will admit they don't know how many people work for the United States anymore.
I remember there was a famous hearing, and some congressman was talking to somebody, I think from the Pentagon, and they didn't know how many F-18s they had or something. And the congressman said, I'm not, I don't have all these facts right, but something like this. It was something like, how come you don't know how many F-18s you have? And Walmart can tell me exactly how many tubes of Crest are in a store in Albuquerque. But anyway. All right, let me introduce our guest. David Silek is an attorney at law. He had a phone issue at the beginning, so I'm going to introduce him now. He's a buddy of mine. He's such a good friend that he's the only guy who has threatened to sue me twice and is still on the show. So, David, we appreciate you joining us. David's a famous attorney in Virginia, or infamous, depending on what side of the courtroom you were on. But that's true. He's threatened to sue me twice, and we're still buddies. So that says something about his character, or my judge of character, one of the two. I don't know. But anyway, okay, let's get to this next thing. This is more evidence, more of the same. There was some good news. I guess housing starts. We'll get to that next. But some bad news. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday we learned that Cisco is going to lay off thousands of people, and Borders Books, although that's a whole different story. That's about the changing retail method of purchasing books. It's not really an economic story, but that's 11,000 people. I think in the last month that we got numbers for, the total job growth in the United States was 18,000. And so we're going to lose 10,000 or 11,000 from Borders because they're going belly up. And then we're going to lose 3,000 or so, 4,000 in U.S. jobs. Some will be attrition or early retirement from Cisco's downscaling. And then it looks here, it says almost 2/3 of U.S. shoppers plan to spend the same or less this back-to-school season as last year. Surveys showed in an early sign that retailers may not obtain a huge boost from the second biggest selling season of the year. And it says about 65% of parents surveyed by American Research Group for Reuters said they did not plan to spend more during the key season. It all adds up, you know. Like you're an attorney.
It does all add up. But if you read what Steve Wynn said yesterday, he went on a rant out in Vegas about this administration and its ability to quash jobs and to stifle growth, and how people are just sitting on their money, not investing or doing anything with it right now because of fear of this administration. And that right there is the reason why you continue to have job loss. With regard to Borders, well, it happens. It's a changing economy. The same thing happened in Front Royal in the turn of the century when we got automobiles. We had a famous family by the last name of Trout that were known for their wagons and wheels. Well, wagons and wheels went to the wayside as the automobile happened. Today, the same thing's happening to Borders and other bookstores in the fact that you have Amazon and Kindle and online shopping. The business model continually changes, and unless a business continues to change its model, it might as well expect to go out of business. If you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. It's an old business axiom, and I would suggest to you that the people at Borders and such entities like that are affected by a changing economy or technology failed to prepare, and now they fail.
It's a sad story. Yeah, these big bookstores are basically just showrooms for Amazon. We go in there, we have a cup of coffee, we look around, kick the tires. If you discover anything, unless you something urgent you need right then, I mean, you just make note of it and go home and order from Amazon and save 40% and don't have to pay sales tax. Although I'm sure as an attorney and a proud taxpayer, you would fill out your use form at the end of the year and pay your $1.08.
I believe in the Supreme Court judgment that says it is the duty of the American taxpayer to pay the lowest tax possible.
Oh. A lot of, I think most of us agree with that. So anyway, so retail is not looking particularly grand, and then but some good news: June housing starts are at a 6-month high. Permits are up. What do you think? We're still propping up artificially high prices, right?
Absolutely. And
Ron Paul's been on this.
The banks right now are sitting on a 2+ year inventory in Prince William County, and I assume it's about the same elsewhere throughout the Commonwealth, and probably nationwide. But banks are sitting on a 2-year inventory. They aren't even releasing it, simply because they're trying to prop up the housing market prices for existing homes. Now, included in that existing inventory in Prince William County are new homes. What happened throughout Northern Virginia, builders were underway when the recession started in 2008, and then they went belly up and didn't finish. Banks got these properties back and finished them, so banks are actually sitting on some new home inventory, trying to get prices back up and driving inventory down so prices go back up.
What do you do with so many people who have a house? They're trying to sell it. They can't sell it. They don't want to cut it anymore. They owe more than, it just adds up and up. But Ron Paul said, and I think he's right on, I don't agree with him on everything. I don't think we should go back to the gold standard and tie the value of our dollar to something that could wildly fluctuate that we have no control over, not even any influence over, the price of gold. But I think he's right on this, that we have, they doubled in 5 years. You saw it. With these liar's loans, Absolutely
ridiculous what housing costs went to during the 2000s. Absolutely ridiculous, but they kept going up and up and up, and then everybody used their homes as ATMs, pulling money out, refinancing every 6 to 8 months, and because the appraisals kept going up, and they kept pulling out. Now everybody's upside down. It's tragic, but it's what happened, and that's why you have so many foreclosures now.
Yeah, my dad, he says he doesn't care. He just rides it out. He said it's all paper, because he and my mom are in this house, and that's their retirement home, and they could care less. This paid off, whatever, bring it. So that's
the beautiful thing
they're
about
lucky.
The stash of cash I have. You talked about going back to the gold standard, and Senator or Representative Ron Paul, or maybe it was his son, whichever one of the Pauls said it, the senator or the representative. I have Confederate currency that might soon be worth more than the U.S. dollar.
Hopefully, only to maybe Texas will buy it. The governor in Texas, he might be issuing his own if he has his way. Okay, so all right. Here's speaking of housing. There was an interesting report in Reuters. Banks continuing their robo-signing. This is where you're an attorney. Have you ever done a foreclosure cases or fought it or anything? Do you want to speak to this? This is just unbelievable.
Yes. Actually, I was sitting in court last week and saw this very thing happen. A little old lady stood up and said, well, I've asked them for the original paperwork and they can't produce it. That's the other thing that keeps happening, in addition to not being able to trace the line of mortgages, and judges here in the Commonwealth are now very serious about that. There is no rubber stamping of, well, Your Honor, my client bought the mortgage. All of the judges in the Commonwealth, they must receive a directive from the Supreme Court saying document, 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 because they can't show the chain of custody or title to these mortgages. And I personally know of one lady that's been in the house for over a year without paying anything because they can't produce a mortgage.
I'm not for someone, I'm for honesty, right? So I'm not for someone, if they, but this is just insane. It's just sloppy, but it's a big price to pay, $300,000 to lose because you can't find a piece of paper when everyone knows that the person hasn't paid anything, and, but that's what caused.
Now you're looking at the moral issue beyond the legal issue. I think morally these people have a duty to get out if they don't pay their debts. Simple as that. It's a freedom of contract. You contracted to do this. You haven't done this. Get the hell out. That being said, the Messiah, the one who lives in the White House, has said, oh, well, you don't have to pay your mortgage for a year now before foreclosure proceedings can start. I find that just morally reprehensible. But that being said, the Messiah has said it's okay. So, who am I to confront the Messiah on his ethics and his morality, etc., I will not vote for him. But that being
By the
said,
way,
the White House
I forgot to put a disclaimer out there that David Silek is in fact a Republican-leaning attorney.
Actually, he is not. He is not a Republican. He's a libertarian.
Okay, so that's why anytime I want you to agree to something, I just
But
Ron
I
Paul
tend to
said.
generate Republican votes. I tend to generate Republican votes, and yes, Ron Paul is my ideal candidate for president right now.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting. But this robo-signing thing, where they basically, the whole problem for folks who don't know is that in order to foreclose on someone, or in order, the same thing happened. We had someone, Angie, on the other night, and this same situation happened with a credit card bill. She owed, I think, $900 or $1,200. They sold it. Capital One's sold it to whatever company, and then that they probably sold it for 50 cents on the dollar, and that company is suing her, Angie, and the judge said, if you don't have the original documents, we're not doing it today, and he continued it. So it's the same thing there. You know, they just they don't have their homework, and they're having these problems. And from being an attorney, 90% of it is your prep. It's not what you see on TV. It's the homework ahead of time that wins cases, and especially with contract law.
Well, back to the adage I enunciated to your listeners earlier: if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Okay, here's another story. This is interesting, and I hope you had a chance to check this one out. This, I guess, a Pittsburgh Steelers player. He made some controversial remarks the night that Osama bin Laden was killed, criticizing people celebrating the death of Osama bin Laden, and he had a deal with Hanes to endorse Champion underwear, and they dumped him 3 days after the comments. They said that your comments we don't agree with, and we're dumping you. Again, we're at contract law, and this is a whole thing. Who could possibly be against getting bin Laden?
I'm willing to put big money that there was a contract clause that said he's prohibited from making certain remarks that the company deems offensive, or its users or customers might deem offensive, or which reflect poorly upon the company, blah, blah, blah. It's not necessarily a morality clause, but it is a restriction on free speech. And this has been tried, and it's been upheld by courts across the United States as well as in the Commonwealth, that public endorsement ads have that clause, and I'm putting money on it that this contract with this Philadelphia Steelers player has it. He loses.
I think so. I mean, and this isn't some rookie company just getting into the sports endorser business. Hanes and Champion for decades have done this, and I'm sure they have a wide-ranging, like you said, not morality clause, but the same type of thing. If you get in trouble or if you say something controversial, anything that would, I'm sure it's wide-ranging to cover all the bases.
Yep, I would.
So I'm guessing is going to go down, and ironically, his attorney said this isn't about the money. Good, because I don't think he's going to win any money.
That's right. And if he wanted to say what he said, he chose to, and now he suffers the consequence for saying it. Simple as that.
That's the way it goes. Okay, so let me ask you this. Go ahead.
My contracts professor had a great statement about freedom of contract. We're bound because we intend to be bound and agree to it. This guy agreed to be paid money, and in consideration of that, he decided to forego certain liberties. One of those is opening his big mouth and making stupid statements. So he voided the agreement.
All right, so we're in agreement. All right, here, this was interesting. There's from ZDNet, Ziff Davis, there was an article, Can Anyone Challenge Apple with the Tablets? And I don't have an iPad or any of the tablets. I've got a bunch of computers here. I've got a laptop, but it seems to me iPad is the guy to beat. And everyone views it as it's clearly the market leader. It created the whole segment. And It's got the most apps by far. I think 400 and some thousand apps to, it's dramatically more. And there are people, there are the Apple fanboys, and there are people who hate Apple. But in general, it's the one to beat. So these other guys come along, and they all price it the same. And it seems to me that if you're trying to beat the Big Mac, the most popular, the McDonald's in the fast food business, you've got to either come up with a better product, which they can't because it's all about how many apps you have, and it's about perception to a degree. People view the iPad as better. Or you've got to have a lower price or something. And it seems to me if you're charging the same price point as the other one that is perceived and in actuality is better, that just seems insane to me. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. And frankly, I bought an iPad for my mother for Christmas that she never liked Mac products, but she loves it. I like using it. I bought an iPhone. I love it. And really, the iPad, a large iPhone, and you use a lot of the same apps. But that being said, I think your characterization of the market and entry into the market is dead on right. If you're going to market a product that's similar in nature, you better be cheaper if you want to get market share. Otherwise, you lose to the dominant player. If you want to have the same price, you better have a differentiated product that's somehow better and creates more value for the consumer. Droid and everyone else have failed to do that as you review that article. But that being said, today, Drudge had Apple as the golden apple. Sales were higher than expected. They have new products coming out daily for the iPad and iPhone, and they're the top dog. And I don't see anybody knocking them off the top pole anytime soon with a competing product, because simply Apple doesn't crash like all the others. You're starting to hear now about Droid phones and all these other tablets having viruses. Apple has no virus.
Yeah, it was. I remember I was a computer programmer in McLean, Virginia, at a company called Deltec, working on the electronic timesheet program. And I remember the power went out, and we had just got our first Mac to write a version of ET for the Apple, and the power went out, and the whole place went black. All the computers off, the lights are off, and the only thing on was the Apple. It was like this glistening Apple logo from heaven, because I guess there was a built-in power, uninterruptible power supply, and we didn't even know about. So yeah, that was funny. But anyway, okay, so let's next I want to hit on this car thing. This is really interesting that Nissan is launching the 2012 electric Leaf. What are your in more states? But the whole concept of an electric car sounds great. It's the pros. The negative is it doesn't go very far before you have to charge it for 12 hours. But the positive is it's 90% efficient. I think that an internal combustion engine, which has been around for over a century and what we all drive, I think 35% of the energy produced actually propels the car, whereas an electric car, even though they're still burning energy, they're burning electricity somewhere, and you're charging your vehicle, then driving with it, but it's 90% plus efficient. So it doesn't waste 65%, it wastes 5 to 10%.
That's all well and good. That's all well and good, but I think that car is going to appeal to one group of people, pinko commie liberals, and that's it.
I think it's a good idea if you can, if it went.
Well,
I mean, if you could.
You're a pinko commie liberal, Dan.
No, I think it's. I don't like giving money to the countries that hate us and bombed us on 9/11. It's not a green issue. It's a national security issue. Those countries that sell us oil, that's the only resource they have. Some of them don't even have water. The only thing they have is oil.
And
they would all be dirt poor.
If we wanted to send a clear message to those countries, we would have done so by tapping oil here. But again, the communist pinko liberals won't let you do that either.
It's
so
not
really,
enough,
the communist pinko liberals want to support the Arab regimes that want to kill us. And
well, I mean, that's
a
stretch. Yeah, yeah, he's a dangerous Arab extremist. No, I think it used to be like wacko green people, But then all of a sudden, a lot of folks are excited about this because after 9/11, it became a national security issue. I don't like to be dependent on foreign countries, and we do not have enough oil to be completely independent. We straight up don't have it. You can drill everywhere.
We can buy it from Mexico and help the poor Mexicans.
Or Hugo Chavez. Get him to sign a deal before his...
Cancer.
He's dying of cancer.
He's going to Cuba for nationalized Obamacare / Castro care. He'll be dead shortly.
Oh, dear. I know you'll send him a card. You will...
Right.
Anyway. Okay, so I think... okay, now put aside your communist, pinko, liberal, evil, Obama likes it, so it must be bad theory on the electric cars. Here's the way... the biggest thing, I'm sure you will agree, is...
They won't get out of their own way. If I see a tractor truck trailer coming at me, I want to be able to get the hell out of the way.
Well, one problem...
Little car can't.
One of the problems... Now you know why I invited him on.
You know it's true. You know it's true. Just go ahead and admit it. It's true.
No, I don't think it's a communist pinko thing. I think an electric car is... if they can get the battery problem. The Israelis do it right.
If you have a tractor trailer truck barreling down the road at you, and you're a little communist pinko liberal car with a battery, versus a car with a combustion engine that has more horsepower to get the hell out of the way, which one do you want to be in?
Well, I mean, okay, fine, but I guess if we were all electric, you'd have electric trucks, right? Or they'd all be on trains, and Warren Buffett would be even richer.
So you just want to give more liberty and power over to the government.
No, but I think the Israelis do it right.
Light bulb.
The light bulb? Oh, you're going to rant about the light bulb?
What if it's light? Another communist pinko liberal ploy.
Okay, adjectives aside, I think the Israelis do it right because the biggest problem with them, aside from getting hit by tractor trailers, is the distance you can travel. It's just not practical to have an electric car. Maybe if you lived in Front Royal and worked in Front Royal and never ever traveled anywhere, but you can't just have an electric car. It's just not practical. But what the Israelis do is they do it like a propane exchange. And I don't know if it's fully implemented, but every gas station will have this propane exchange. It'll be all over the country. Of course, it's a tiny country. It's easy to implement nationwide things. But you'll just drive in, and they'll swap your old battery and put a new battery in, and you'll have a plan, just like a cell phone plan.
Fewer people live in Israel than they live in New York City.
Oh, granted. Yeah, I'm not saying this is something you can do nationwide. It's like a lot of the Asian countries have internet that makes us look like, from the 70s. But it's because they're tiny countries and they can, do that. It's a lot easier to pick one state of the United States and do that than, 300 million people. Okay, so we agree that electric cars are the future.
Oh, no, that's your thought, not my thought.
All right, so calorie counts higher than advertised in U.S. Reuters, I think, had this big thing, or AFP, the French news agency.
Americans don't care.
You think we just talk thin but eat fat?
I think Americans desire to be fat.
No, I think that, okay, this is a whole thing. The reason we're fat, I've lost 20 pounds since you've last seen me. The reason we're fat is all this garbage we eat. I mean, I was going to the gym. I've been going to the gym for years, and I would do my hour on the thing.
You should quit that.
But
I had a friend almost kill himself on a treadmill recently, ripped his shoulder out, and I said to Holmes, "You need to quit exercising. It might kill you."
So you're advertising for health reasons. Everyone should stop exercising.
Partially.
All right. Okay. Anyway,
I think people should simply just watch what they eat in moderation and do healthy activities. I think sitting on a rotating platform is unnatural. God wants us outdoors in His creation and walking and enjoying life, and doing things in nature, not sitting on a moving, staring at a television. And I think He also wants us to eat things in moderation and to eat healthy, not all of this transmuted, trans fat, blah, blah, blah.
How much do you weigh? Daniel wants to know, my buddy.
143. I'm back down to college weight.
Okay, I'm 160. 161.
You're fat.
I'm obese
means you're
compared to
fat.
you. No, I was pushing 190 when I saw you last.
Oh, Jesus, God almighty.
Over 180. About 180 probably. Okay, so anyway, what do you think about making restaurants post caloric content on the menu boards? Is that a dangerous communist plot?
Waste of time and money. Waste of time and money. One more example of government reaching in and controlling more of your life and telling you what you must do, destroying liberty.
I think we're fat because there's no vested interest. There's no money to be made pushing apples and oranges. I eat a lot of grapes and oranges. There's money, like Stouffer's doesn't want you to eat that, right? They want you to eat their awesome lasagna, which tastes fantastic. And there's money to be made doing that, right? So it's just, you look at all this crap. A lot of it, I think, is we've just gotten food tastes better. Remember when we were kids? Well, you don't, because I'm about 10 years older than you, I think. But there was this awful Swanson TV dinner, and it was aluminum foil. It took an hour to cook because there was no microwaves then. And it was pretty nasty. You had your little fruit thing, your little fruit cobbler, and your,
My family did not have such prepared foods in its house.
You just had...
we had a lady that cooked.
Well, okay. Well, when I was growing up, we had a lady that cooked too, but we were overseas. We weren't... so everyone should just get domestic. You know what? Everyone should get domestic help, and that would solve the employment problem and the obesity problem.
Taxes on her? Did your family pay household income taxes and withhold on her?
We had a staff of 5, and we did not pay any of that because we were overseas.
Pay your fair share.
We did whatever.
You took it for overseas people.
We had a staff of, depending on what country we're in, we had a gardener, a security team. We had.
And did you pay a fair trade living wage?
Yes. In fact, we were told we couldn't pay more because the local embassy told us you can only pay X amount. I don't remember how much it was. But the government didn't want us to pay more because we had a habit of paying too much, and then we would artificially inflate expectation of wages, and then we would cause commotion. That everyone would be upset because they didn't earn what the Americans.
So you did not believe in a free economy.
We did. We also believed in not getting kicked out of the country.
In the artificial creation of a free economy.
It was a military dictatorship. The guy in charge, who used to drive in front of my house, Sam Doe, won office by executing his predecessor, and he himself was later skinned alive by a general. So these are not guys you tangle with. And when he says don't pay more than X amount, you say yes, sir, or you leave the country. I'm not going to die for giving some guy extra weight. When already we were paying vastly more than the local economy paid. I mean, they were middle class working for us compared to what they would be doing.
Why didn't you want to help the underclass come up in society and improve
We did.
Their children? But
We
you
did.
hired middle class, not class.
No. We paid them middle class salaries. So we took guys who were making a tenth of what we were. We paid them 5-10 times what they were getting before. But it was we could afford it because we were overseas. On the government dole, whatever.
Dan, I'm just giving you a hard time.
I know, but it makes for good TV. Our viewer count's up. All right. Communist pinkos. But anyway, I think the electric car is pretty cool, but I think it would work if you could swap it out, just like a propane can. If you didn't have to worry about the 12-hour thing.
Well, that's because you're partially a pinko-liberal commie.
No, I'm a former Friends Group president at the state park.
Guzzling engine to contribute to the greenhouse effect, so winter is warmer.
He flies out to California just to vote for Schwarzenegger. All right, this is great. So you could care less about calorie counts higher than because you're a skinny Arab.
No, I'm skinny.
You're mixed.
Fat people want to be fat, let them be fat. Some fat woman walked in the court the other day, and I called the clerk of court to start laughing and have to get up because I couldn't take my eyes off this fat woman. I've never seen a woman as fat as this. She had.
You were eyeing her.
Oh, I was just laughing. I couldn't take my eyes off. I was like, actually, I wasn't laughing. The clerk of court was laughing. My mouth was open. It had hit the floor. I was so shocked by the size of this woman and the amount of blubber on her.
Wow. This is an accomplished attorney.
I've never seen anything like this. No, this wasn't an attorney. This was a
No,
witness.
you.
And then she would. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it is what it is.
He calls it like he sees it. All right.
Yep.
Here's one. This is great. Philadelphia police go after text walkers. They're going to crack down on people. I'm guilty of this. I know you are. Oblivious texters.
I heard. Right. I heard that on the radio on WINC this evening.
Tell me you're not guilty of that.
One more time. Oh, I have texted and walked. I don't text and drive anymore since it became illegal. But I used to try multitasking, not anymore.
This is from the AP just a few minutes ago at 8:24 p.m. President Barack Obama and a startling number of Republican senators lauded a bipartisan deficit reduction plan Tuesday that includes $1 trillion in higher taxes, raising hopes of a last-minute compromise. I think you're right. I don't think this is going to pass the House. I guarantee you any Republican that votes for this faces a serious chance of a Tea Party-backed challenge in the primary.
Not only that, they just won't win an election. Forget it. They're out. If the Republican votes for that, they are O-U-T out of office.
Even that lady, I'm not a witch lady could win on this.
Now, here is an interesting thing that hasn't been talked about. You haven't heard this in the news. The Constitution requires that all bills that generate revenue originate in what body of the Congress?
The House.
Right. A Senate proposal can't win because it didn't generate in from the House.
It's a budget issue. It's a budget issue, right?
It is a budget issue, but guess what? The Constitution is clear. Unless we just throw the Constitution out and have a living, breathing document, we forget it from time to time. But the Constitution says all bills that generate revenue or raise the revenue shall generate in the House of Representatives. I don't know how they get to have a tax increase unless it starts in the House.
I don't see Boehner.
It's under the powers granted to the Congress.
I don't see
Article 1.
Yeah, I don't see the House passing a $1, much less $1 trillion tax increase. I just don't see it. As I
said, it's DOA.
I mean, they can argue. There is an argument for it because the argument for it is that taxes are lower on the super rich. I say super. On people 250 and up, they're lower than they have been in 50 years when Bush lowered them. And the economy is in the tank. The worst has been since the Great Depression. So whether that is coincidence or causal, I don't know. But I wouldn't support raising anybody's taxes in this economy. I mean, how many poor people have given you a job, David?
None.
Same here. No poor person has ever hired me. And I don't think that this makes sense. I don't see it passing. I think DOA.
Yes, sir.
Okay, last thing, this texting thing. Tell me you're not guilty of that. Tell me you are not going to be the first one cited if you go to Philly.
If I go to Philly, I run a good risk of being arrested or issued a summons.
You're probably one of those guys who was remember at the Philly Stadium, the Eagles Stadium, they had a courtroom in it, and if you were acting up, because the fans are so notoriously bad, they would arrest you, try you, convict you, and fine you during the game, right there. And when they were headed for the playoffs one year, the newspaper articles said the judge is polishing his gavel. Oh, I love Pennsylvania. I believe it. All right, well, my guest, do you have a blog or a page you want me to reference, David, for folks to go to?
No. We have a firm website, oaslaw.com. www.oaslaw.com is our firm webpage. There are numerous conservative political pages I would refer people to, but I'll defer to that.
Well, if some pinko liberal commie wants to hire a good attorney, they should go to OAS Law.
Go to oaslaw.com.
This is a guy
and then you can click on it.
Here, I'll put it up here. This is a guy who's suing a town for $30 million and may win. So he's not afraid. I'll give him that. Hey, I appreciate it, and we'll have to compare because
one of the defendants in that lawsuit decided to make a fool of himself in court the other day.
let's talk about it off camera because they're not here and to defend themselves. But oaslaw.com, I'll have to, as soon as I end the show, it's going to hang up on you, so I'll call you in a minute. But oaslaw.com, David Silek, good guy, good friend. Like I said, he's threatened to sue me twice, and he's still my friend, so he must be a good guy. Anyway, I appreciate you being on the show, David. The show is 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific live, and then it's on YouTube. If you check out my Google Plus page, the URL is gplus.to/McDermott, and I've got links to the iTunes, the Ustream, the YouTube, everything, Blog Talk Radio, all that. So anyway, folks, we appreciate you very much tuning in tonight, and we look forward to tomorrow night's show with Emily Williams. David, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Ciao.